Make real change. Make change real. The process is beautiful. Empowering mentality to make real change in the world. This is Coach King. Yeah, so I've been talking about the idea of change for the past umpteenth month. It's been a lot of months. And I've been going through just the aspects of change alone. I haven't even gotten to the idea. I talked about what an idea is. I talked about uncertainty. I talked about resistance. I talked about all of these different types of aspects of change. And I just left impact. Impact is the residual that's left after an encounter with something that has impacted your life. Think about the people that impact your life. Think about the influence that they've had based off the impact that they've had on your life. I know you're probably going to get sick and tired of me saying the word impact, but I just want to make sure that you understand that that was the previous discussion or the previous topic of the idea of change and the aspect of change, which is impact that we talked about. So if you haven't watched it, please go back and look at the video. It's on YouTube. The full length video. I've also been posting shorts and those type of things on social media. So please follow me at Coach King 1989. And that's all my platforms. You can find it on Facebook. You just, Coach King, and look for the Make Real Change logo. Look for the crown and then the 3 dashes underneath. So yes. So let's talk about this next component or the next aspect. So this next aspect of change is called evolution. I kind of debated on this one. Really, it's a continuous improvement upon change. Change is a continual process. Change is a circle. Okay, there's a circle of change, circle of life. But I wanted to just narrow in on this particular part. And this is the last one, and it's the last one for a reason. So this aspect is called evolution. Evolution is a complex thought process with many ambiguous developments. Remember, this is the development word that go through stages that develop over time. So go think about stages, think about an ambiguous. So it means it's not something that is defined all the time. That means there is some ambiguity to it. That means that it's not consistently the same. Okay. Evolutionary change is often an ongoing and continuous process. So it's ongoing. Evolutionary, the aspect of evolving. We use these words. Sarah Jakes Roberts used woman evolve because it's continuous. There is no end. We should be constantly changing, and change. This is that continuous process of something moving about our lives, and this is where we get the notion change is inevitable. Right, the only thing that remains constant in our life is change itself. So, most importantly, the aspect of evolution is predicated. So the aspect of evolution is predicated on time. In order for anything to change, there is a time associated with this. Okay. The evolutionary aspect of change requires one to change over time. See, time is that thing that kind of drives this evolutionary change process. That's why our time is so valuable. There's nothing more valuable than your time. Okay. And yeah, so keep that in mind. So if somebody, we often take on jobs that we work like hundreds of hours a week, me included. And that's time I will never get back. That's only time spent. And our metrics in business is based off of productivity. And this is part of why I started this whole podcast, is to say, all right, how can we become more productive in this life of change? Okay. How do we better use our time to be more efficient? But not only that, how do we still reach the goals that we want in our life with the time that we have, which is limited? Right. And live it to the fullest, which means be as productive as we can. There are people that are more productive than others. There's people that are less productive than others. And it's all how we manage our time. So this evolutionary aspect of change requires one to change over time or for things in your life to improve over time, right? In this evolutionary equation, the common denominator is time. So let me look at the best book in the world. I call it the Bible. Let's look at this thing called time for you Bible heads, scholars, pastors, priests, bishops, any title in ministry. I'm going to take us to Ecclesiastes 3, 1 through 13. And yes, I'm going to read the whole thing because we really want to understand that God has this thing called time. For everything, there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die. This is New Living Translation. A time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching. There's a time to search and a time to quit searching. A time to keep and a time to throw away. Clean out that closet. You don't need that dashiki no more. It's not the 70s. Throw it away. There's a time to keep and a time to throw away. Man, what are you still doing with them shoes? They got holes in them. There's a time to throw it away. Okay. A time to tear and a time to tear and a time to mend. There's a time for like sorrow. There's a time to cry, to tear, to feel sad. And then there's a time to fix things, mend it back together, right? A time to be quiet. And a time to speak, right? A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war. We don't talk about that. And a time for peace, right? What do people really get for all their hard work? What do we get out of all of this hard work that we're doing? I have seen the burden God has placed on us all. Yet God has made everything beautiful in its own time. He has planted eternity in the human heart. But even so, people cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So I conclude there is nothing better than to be happy and enjoy ourselves as long as we can. And people should eat and drink, enjoy the fruits of their labor, for these are gifts from God. So the fruit of your labor and all of the hard work is a gift from God. So what do people really get for all the hard work? The fruit of their labor. And that's a gift. It is important for us to understand that change is inevitable and constant. Remember that notion, right? The change aspect of evolution teaches that changes that are made are dependent on the time. Evolutionary thinkers are able to sequence moments that build from one event to the next, and at each stage, the event evolves. The best example of this would be represented in video games. I love them, okay? Take your most popular video game. It happens like sagas. Like, think of like Zelda, Mario, Sonic, God of War. Always my favorite. There's a whole series. I mean, just all of these games. And as the game progresses, the stage becomes more challenging, right? It gets harder. The bosses get bigger. They get stronger. They get faster. They move. They have bigger skill sets. They throw things at you. They go from, just melee to projectile to frags to area damages. It just gets more challenging, right? And it requires you to have what? More skill and effort. And the main character, you, gains these skills, right? in strengths and abilities, right? As the story goes, as you progress, you gain new skills, new strengths, and abilities. And the story of the map actually expands, right? It becomes more expansive, and you have access to areas that were once unknown. Okay. And then it leaves you as the end user immersed in a world that is full of evolutionary ideas. Think about that for a second. Think about this aspect of evolutionary change as something that is continual, but it's also developing, and it's also taking all of these aspects and throwing them together and putting it into this evolutionary idea. Okay. Another thing to consider regarding the aspect of evolutionary change is the idea of culture. Culture is a complex web of beliefs, behaviors, customs, traditions, and values shared by a group of people. It shapes how we think, how we act, and interact with the world. Culture is learned, passed down through generations, and constantly is evolving. It's expansive. Okay. As our culture um, evolutionizes or becomes or changes, as the culture changes, so does the people. And as the people change, so does the culture. It's a direct relationship with each other. Okay. And so as the culture evolves, so do the people. Think about civilizations. Think about how we've gone from a farming and agricultural society to now we're in this new wave of technology where each technology, every day, there is a new discovery. Every second, there is a new discovery. So we're moving at the speed that is, you can get rich in 1 second. You could post something and 1 million views hit, and now you're the most popular person on the internet. And what do? Your life changes just in a flash. An interesting story of that is Pastor Michael Todd posted relationship goals. One woman on Twitter basically reposted his entire series, or just this little snippet, and 1 million people looked at it. I have friends that personally have had 1 million views. My pastor has had 1 million views. And that type of thing going viral is common. It's common. Things happen. People go viral. And it's part of that evolutionary change aspect. And as you go viral, your life changes. Some good aspects, some bad. Now people know you. People who don't know you. Or they think they know you because you're, but proximity all across the world. This is a global society. And now that the internet has expanded, that's another evolution, is the internet. Evolutionary change. Internet's constantly expanding. And, depending on what views you have, you could say, hey, we need to censorship. Some believe that that's not right. We need to be able to have access to information, filtering certain informations, children having access to information. Depends on where you sit. That right there is the complexity of this thing as we evolve. These things that we need to look at. So, and it impacts what? Our culture, because it shapes how we think, it shapes how we act and interact with the world, right? And also, culture is learned. So that means we learn a culture. So that means everything that we take in as evolution happens, we learn a culture, right? And then it's passed down from generation to generation. And it's interesting. We talk about what we pass down. I started this because in the divorce, I realized that I may not be able to give my son money, but I do want, if something were to happen to me and he ever questioned who dad was, I want him to see me. I want him to see this, and I want him to remember what I'm saying to him. If he can only listen to my voice, I want him to have this for himself, because I want him to have this wealth of knowledge, and I want him to, if he wants to, just hear my voice when I'm gone, I've left this for him. So Shiloh, I love you, son. And this is not a time like I'm dying or I'm thinking about death, but I'm thinking about legacy, and I'm thinking about what culture I want his kids to understand about their grandfather. My life has been full of experiences. Some I haven't experienced, some I have. But ultimately, the legacy that I want to leave is in this mic. You know, it's in this writing. It's the culture that I want to give to my son. It's wisdom that I want to impart. Like David, when he wanted to impart into Solomon, he wrote and he wrote and he wrote, because he understood. He understood what he needed to pass to his son. Some things he did not pass down. Some things he did. His love for women, he definitely did pass that to his son. Man after David's own heart, right? But, there's some things your children get honest. And being a father has changed this for me. And this idea that culture is passed down through generations. I can only imagine what my forefathers would say. I'm blessed to be able to call my father and talk to him. Love talking to my dad. I'm blessed to be able to call my mom and talk to her. Love talking to my mom. Blessed to have a sister that loves me. Even when I'm wrong, she still loves me. And I love talking to her. My brother has been a solid foundation. He's been like, I grew up with 3 parents, because there's like a huge gap between me and my brother. So it was like having another parent in the house at times, which was good, because I got a lot of discipline on all sides. And there's a lot of things that have been passed down, because of that age gap between me and my brother. I got to develop strong relationships with everyone in my family. And the constant evolution of our family is, no matter what, we have memories together. All different perspectives on it, but we can sit and we can laugh and we can kiki and we can have a good time with each other, even if we haven't seen each other in a long time. So I I said all that to just say that family is a culture, and family evolves too. So don't be scared of your evolution in your family, no matter how dysfunctional it may be and what it looks like. And men, we have a diligence to work with partners who we start families with, right? But do your part to be the best you can be, and showing up as the best version of yourself, so that you can pass down a legacy that's worth being passed down, right? We want to live our lives circumspectively for our children. It means upright and doing the right thing. You want your kids mock you. Your kids mimic your movements. They see your patterns. They understand more than you give them credit for. Because when they leave here and you don't see them, they're actually acting just like you in public. They're being you. So if you're a grump and grouchy and a Grinch, well, who stole your Christmas? Right? So you got to understand that evolution encompasses everything from language, so how we speak, our dialect, the way we talk, to religion, to what we believe in the kingdom, we believe in Buddha, we believe Hindu, whatever your religion, whatever practices that you have. And then like art to social norms, right? Your food, social norms is what accepted, societal acceptances, right? Food, think of the cliches. I'm a black African American. Guess what I like? Fried chicken, right? And watermelon. Well, I do, but I prefer steak and potatoes. That's my thing, you know. Um, yeah, steak and potatoes is my rock star jam. You know what I'm saying? If you really know how to make a steak, let me know. But I love steak. Okay, so think about food. Pass that down, right? My son loves bacon. He'll eat it all the time. And music. What are you listening to? You know? Who remembers in elementary school, high school, these are for my 80, 89, 90s babies who graduated in from '04 to, or maybe even 99. So like, think about it for our 90s, 80s and 90s babies. We had this thing where we grew up learning about how our relationships, like as teenagers, the most influential thing in our lives was music. That's how we related to one another, was through sound, was through music. And, you know, it's weird because when I'm 30, if you feel like you spend so much time working or being a parent that you rarely get an opportunity to have those nostalgic moments like you did when you're in elementary school or when you were with your friends in college or, you know, in high school or whatever. If you didn't go to college, you just in high school or, you know, in your 20s, whatever you're doing in your youth, right? And I'm not old by any means, but those times to reminisce with people and just relate to people like that from a music standpoint, which is something like is culturally accepted, is few far in between. And if it is, it's like 5 seconds. It's like, hey man, you heard that new song? Yeah. You heard that new Kendrick? They not like us, bro. You know what I mean? And you know, if you change your genre, like lately I've changed my rap culture genre to expand it into, you know, into more of a Christian based hip hop, right? So like Miles Minnick is killing it, you know. He's doing a lot of features with he did a feature with another artist who is mainstream or whatever. And yeah, he's been doing a good thing, you know. You got Caleb Gordon. There's some really good ones out there. And I'm sorry if I missed you guys, but you know, I promote, you know, the content. You know, when I turned into a father, you know, I had to reconsider what it is that I wanted to pass down and what I wanted my son to hear. You know, I grew up straight raw. You know, ooh baby, I like it raw. Ooh baby, I like it. You know, DB, ODB, and Wu-Tang. Cream, get the money, dollar bills, y'all. And of course, Outkast, you know, me and you, your mama and your cousin too, rolling down the strip off, you know what I'm saying? Coming up, slamming Cadillac dog, you know, Snoop Dogg, Little Mace, Harlem World was my first album that I purchased, which is dope. And then I had DMX too, you know. Man, I can't believe he's gone. You know, LL Cool J, back in the day, like the old school LL, like, Mama said knock you out, huh? I'm gonna knock you out, huh? Mama said knock you out, huh? I'm gonna knock you out. Oh, yeah. I grew up on all of that. And so those are the things that were passed down. You know, I had uncles that were DJs, right? And it's so funny. Like I said, now I listen to something completely different. That's an evolution in my life, right? Because I don't want to negate my childhood growing up, because Rakim was dope. De La Soul was absolutely dope. As I got into teenage years, you know, The Roots, Lil Wayne, all of those artists, you know, have impact on our culture, you know. And then you go into R&B and you get into Michael Jackson, the king of pop and soul, and you know, you have James Brown and all of these different musical generational musicians that have like been passed along the way. Like, and when you talk to your parents and they talk about who they were listening to and how we had family music, which was Luther. In my house, it was Luther and Johnny. My mom and dad killed me with that Luther and Johnny, boy. I swear we listened to every Luther album all the way from Michigan to Virginia. Every time we went on a road trip as a family to go see grandma, I already knew what it was. Never too much, never too much. Nobody told me. I knew. I was like, oh, we in Pennsylvania now. We listen to this one. Hey, oh my love, do 1,000. This one is never too much. Yeah. Yeah. So it's good to reminisce. You see how music makes you feel good. Especially when you listen to good stuff. When it was just mom, it was like we would listen to Prince on tape. Evolutionary Change, right? Who has tapes and A and B side where you got to change it. We also had that Rick James blasting from time to time. Shaka Khan. Ooh, Shaka Khan. Yeah, we listened to a lot of good music. Mike Jackson, Off the wall, Mike, and Thriller Mike. Yep. So we traveled so much, and we exposed ourselves to Earth, Wind. Reasons, right? Reasons that we're here. The reasons that we feel. Our feelings won't just disappear, right? I don't know the words, but oh my goodness. So there's so many amazing music, right? The music that we expose ourselves to that shape our culture and it's passed down. Again, I was not born when some of that music was out, but we still jam to it. One of my favorite was My Girl. My principal in elementary school, Ray Fryer. Ray, if you're listening to this, I mean, you had it down, man. You you were singing, and it impacted our entire school because he changed the words to My School, right? Not My Girl. And he sung so well, right? And but we used to My Girl, The Temptations. We can go back to the 60s, and of course Marvin Gaye, and then you had your Barry White, you had Isaac Hayes, okay, and then Parliament and George Clinton, and all of that stuff, and it's just evolutionary. You think about how gospel music has changed. I think Kurt Franklin, he changed the scope of things with Stomp because it kind of went mainstream. It was on the radio. I remember listening to 107.1. Shout out to everybody in Michigan listening to 107.1. My boy Chris holding down and for the 989. Everybody in Saginaw, Michigan, Flint, Detroit, Bay City, Grand Rapids, Muskegon. I mean, y'all don't listen to 107.1, but everybody in the Tri-Cities knows what 107.1 is. And, back when we were growing up, 107.1 was known as the black station. Yeah, the black station. And it was a social norm to say that. That's fine. Nobody got offended. And it was the black station, and that's what we listened to. If you wanted hip hop and R&B, 107.1. 107.1, where radio was actually a thing. Another evolutionary thing, right? Radios. Who listens to that? Now it's all streaming. Like, my son will never know what 97.9 is. He'll just be like, love. Or he'll be like, oh, Dad, Spotify. And you have to pay for, like, you didn't have to pay for the radio. You just turned it on. And they played the latest jams. And you waited. And then you had to like move the antenna just to get a good signal. And then they went to digital. And digital was dope. Because you get it fresh. But then you had to like kind of make sure that little like wire was straight. You know, I remember listening to radio like on a Friday night after school when sports was done in the winter, like right after football season, after we, you know, took that L in the playoffs. And you kind of like, man, that those 2 weeks after was like rough. Like, man. But gaming was serious that night on Friday night. You know, this is before we could play on the internet with our boys. So if your boys had stuff to do and you couldn't do a sleepover on a Friday night, turn that radio on, turn the Madden on, turn on Mario 64 video game, hit that, play that, grab you a pizza, and chill. You know, I was a basement dweller. Shout out to Tim Ross. And yeah, I was a basement dweller, and I played video games all night. I just sat in the basement with my radio on, listening to music. And then the music would change right at about 1. I stayed up pretty late. And about like midnight, it would change. But from like 9 to 11, it was hype. Yang Yang Twins. Yeah. So all of those things, all of the hot music at the time was just like Lil Wayne, dun, dun, and then you go, I like the way you do that right there. Shake your hips as you're walking, let down your hair. Chingy. It's like a walking jukebox because I spent so much time. That's what I spent my time doing. Some say it wasn't productive, but hey, man, I was a good student. I was an athlete. And that's how I spent my free time as a child. Did my chores before. One rule, stipulation, or a cultural thing that was passed down from my mother was before you go downstairs and get on that game, make sure your bed is made. And if you want to go to your friend's house, make sure your room's clean. And so it incentivized me to do the things that I wanted to do, right? But I had to get the things done first. So that's where that discipline came in. And she wouldn't let me have the time that I wanted to spend unless that stuff was done first. So shout out to you, Mom, for the discipline in teaching me that. So yeah, things that are passed down, it constantly evolves. But some things, it evolves differently because we're different. You know, it evolves because it's that concept. Like, think about this, and God forgive me. You know, my grandma, love her, but she was quick with that switch. Okay, so my mom and them, they got it. They got the blues for stuff, right? It was no before you do this and that. It was get up and do it, or you gonna get that switch to that tail. And that's how that was. And so my mom was like, no, I don't want to be like that. My parents were like, no, there's a different way to do it, right? Not saying that I didn't get spankings, you know, but they knew that there was a different way, and they found a different way with me than just passing along the switch thing. And with my son, he's different. He's a different generation than me, because his life and what he has access to is different than mine. So I have to be able to say, hey, son, if you want to watch this, you have to do this. And the thing about this generation I've noticed is they are like, why? They want to know why. Why? Why do I need to do that? And if we're as parents, we can get defensive because I said so. What you mean why? Because I didn't have no opportunity to say why. That was the thing. And if I asked why, it's because I said so, and because you need to do this, right? And to me, it didn't make sense. But now you realize why your kids ask why. it's not for you to be defensive. It's because they actually want to know why they need to do that. And so I try. I'm like, boy, you need to clean your room. Why, Dad? Because if you don't clean your room, you get bugs. I make up little. I'm not lying, but yeah. I said, do you want to be a slob for the rest of your life? Do you want to be a dirty man? Do you want to have like food and everything stuck in your carpets? Well, then you need to clean that up. It's simple. And he goes, oh, okay. It's amazing how resilient their brains are and how much sponges they are. And it's so funny because he'll throw the same thing on me. Dad, you need to clean up, but you're going to get bugs in the house. You're going to have termites. And so it's amazing how that works. And so, yeah, I went on a long tangent, sorry. But essentially culture is the shared identity of a group. So your family is a culture, your church community is a culture, and you share this identity, right? Religious groups get lumped into, oh, this is a Jesus culture. But then we separate ourselves, right? Culturally, based off this shared identity and whatever we identify with, right? So now we've separated ourselves from in God's religious group, right? And I don't mean to make it seem so trivial, but in a way it is, because we all should be believing in one thing. And so our shared identity is God and the Bible, and his teaching and his word and the kingdom, right? And the message from its totality from Genesis to Revelation. That should be our shared identity group, but we live a certain way. Like, we don't have the shared identity as the same all the time, right? Different churches, different people, different communities, different things, right? So in some aspects, right? So culture is the shared identity of a group. And the group is more than two. More than one. More than two, I think. It's a grouping. So it's, couples of 2, 4, 5, a million, the group, right? Cultures evolve over time. So think about the Roman Empire and the other empires that were not built in a day. As cliche as it may sound, it is true. The same reasoning must be understood about evolution. And that's it. So I hope I didn't talk your ear off too much with my ranting about culture and my nostalgia, but I was hoping to paint the timeline for you to see that evolutionary change is good. It shapes our language, our religion, our arts, our norms, our families, and ultimately it impacts you. With the things that are passed down, with things that are learned. And it's a complex web of beliefs, right? Behaviors, customs, and traditions, right? So culture, our time, right, ultimately is impacted by this evolutionary change that we go through. Remember, God gave us a time for everything. So this is Coach King. Make real change. Make change real. The process is what? Beautiful. Empower your mentality to make real change in the world. Peace out.